Thursday, Joint Budget Committee co-chairs Representative Wendy Horman and Senator C. Scott Grow joined me to share their take. Thank you both so much for joining us this week. First of all, Representative Horman, how would you say things are going right now?
I said to someone earlier today, I'm stronger than I thought. We've had some bumps in the road, but we are pressing forward, working toward adjournment as quickly as we can get agreements on budgets.
And Representative Horman, for those who aren't familiar with the rules, one of the ones that's come up lately is now you need a majority on both the House and Senate committees, not just 11 from the Joint Committee.
Right, and to understand how we got there, you have to look back to where we started. And that was when there was a change in House leadership, and there was some concern from the House Majority Caucus that JFAC should not meet jointly anymore because the House was tired of taking up bills that only had majority support because of the Senate. And so there was a real pressure on him to split the Joint Finance Committee. He didn't want to do that, I didn't want to do that. So what that led to was a series of extended meetings and conversations where we came up with this letter. Even with all of that, the rules we operate under are very clear. It's the Constitution, and then it's any adopted rules that apply to the House or the Senate or joint rules. Although there's a difference of opinion there on what joint rules have been adopted, and then custom usage and precedent. Those adopted rules includes Masons. And when you check Masons, you will see that we are operating exactly as we should under that, with compromises being made to make sure and try and keep the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee together.
For those who aren't familiar with parliamentary procedure, we're talking about Mason's manual, which talks about how to run meetings, basically.
Correct.
Yes.
So Melissa, can I kind of talk about
Please.
Joint Finance Appropriation Committee? Most people have no clue what the heck that is. Idaho is unique. Very few states have this. A couple of them monitored or modeled after us. But it's where we have 10 from the House and 10 from the Senate, and they come through together. 10 are called the Appropriation Committee from the House, 10 are the Senate Finance Committee, and then we join together. It's the only joint committee we have that's a permanent committee. All the rest are just the Senate committees or the House committees. This is a great procedure that we have. It's worked for more than 50 years because it avoids having to have the House pass bills and Senate pass bills and then have a conference committee to try to work it out. We work it out in JFAC. That's our responsibility. I'm grateful to my co-chair that we've been able to work great together these last three years. And keeping JFAC together is important.
Now, you say that it's working well, you're meeting together, and you did change some of the rules 3 years ago when Speaker Moyle became the speaker and you two became the co-chairs. We are seeing...
I could respond to that. It is critical that you understand the speaker and the pro tem agree to that. They're our bosses. We work under their direction. We work together. A 50-50 committee or business is the toughest kind of partnership to have because nobody's in charge. And that's why I'm grateful that we can get along well. But to make sure that we did, we had the speaker and the pro tem work with us and came up with that letter. We all agreed to it. That's the way we were going to operate.
This year was the first year we had to test run that. Our staff tells us we didn't lose any budgets the last 2 years. This year we did, and so we started using the language that it will be sent to the House or the Senate. That's when our clerk came in and said, wait, the motion has failed the House, therefore there is nothing that you can send to the House. And sure enough, when you read Masons, you will see that is the case. You have to have a majority of each of the committees to advance a bill. So that's something we'll take up in the interim, refine that language. But that's what our leadership has agreed to. We meet with them regularly on this, and that's how we're trying to proceed in the committee.
And for the average Idahoan listening to this, they're going to say, look, this just looks like dysfunction to me. This looks like people walking out of meetings, appropriations bills that are failing on the floor and in committee. Ultimately, how is this going to affect me as an Idahoan? What would you say?
Members are free to protest in whatever way they choose, but the allegation that we are not operating under rules is just not true.
Well, and this is how democracy, we're a democratic republic, we're the representatives of the people. This is how it works. And so you'll have constituents from one senator, for example, or for a House person have totally different opinions, what they want. And so those opinions are brought into these work groups where they're trying to come up with motions which become bills. And so sure, there's going to be differences of opinion. And that's what we work out in JFAC. and not have a big fight between the House and Senate.
When you take into context the whole of how many agency budgets we're setting, well over 100 motions that happen in JFAC, we've lost 6. That's part of the normal process and to be expected. So we'll get the team back together and figure out how we can get something that we can get a majority vote on.
On Thursday morning, Senator Groh, you held up a list of appropriation bills that you, as a committee, still need to get through. It's mid-March right now. When are we going to see those?
We're hoping that we can see them through this next week and get them done by a week from tomorrow. Now, that depends on our work groups, because they're the ones that come up with the motions or the recommendations people might think of as to what a bill should be. And then we work that out in JFAC, and there can be more than one motion, and so there's agreement or disagreement. And when we come to a consensus, that's when it passes in JFAC, then it goes to the Senate, then it goes to the House, or vice versa. We go 50-50 starting. So we're hoping that the work groups can get the information to us, we can get the bills done, move them along in the next few days, have the last day be a week from tomorrow. That's our hope.
The closer we get to the end of session, the more willing people may be to compromise.
You know,
They get anxious to go home.
which I understand.
Yes,
to
so
be
do
fair,
we.
you know, some of the bills that are left to be set are the biggest ones: health and welfare, and Medicaid, and public schools. Why did you save those to the end?
That was intentional. We saved budgets to the end where we knew there would be a lot of policy activity that would likely impact the budget. That was true in K-12 this year. That was true in Medicaid. That was true in water resources. So these are budgets we intentionally left to the end to make sure that whatever policy action was going to happen could happen, and we could incorporate that into the budget.
In addition, those are huge budgets. You're talking about $3 billion for the K-12. You're talking about $5 billion for health and welfare. I mean, these are the big dollar items. And so our work groups need a lot of time to work through a lot of recommendations, a lot of, we call them line items, but different requests by the agencies or department, things they want. That takes a lot of time, so we save those for the end.
Things are also changing by the day and sometimes the hour in DC. How is that affecting the budget setting process?
I'll comment on that. It's tougher this year because everybody wants to cut, but what they don't understand is these are the requests for the current year's operation to make things happen and keep things going. And so also, I'll just speak to health and welfare. We have entitlements that are from the federal. Those are mandates.
Things like Medicare and Medicaid.
You got it. We have to do those. We have to do Medicaid. And so whatever the bills are, whatever the people have been helped, the number that have helped, the difficulty and the expenses, we have to pay those bills. Now, people don't like that because Medicaid is huge, but we are obligated by the federal government. It's a mandate. We have Medicaid, we have to pay the bills. So that's some big money there.
One other thing I would add on that is you will see some intent language in the appropriation bills making clear that if the uncertainty at the federal level leads to cash not coming in, a grant, whatever that looks like, the agency has no ability to spend it. We're giving them spending authority, but if they don't get the cash, they can't spend it. That's something that anyone on JFAC knows, but perhaps our floor doesn't. So we've added specific language to account for that possibility.
And that's governmental accounting. It's twofold: cash, as she said, and the authority, which is appropriation to spend that cash. That's different than a business. So we have a lot of complexities we deal with.
Just because the federal government gives you the money or you receive a grant doesn't mean that a state agency can spend
Right,
it.
until our legislature, JFAC, and then the legislature appropriates that money.
You both mentioned waiting for big policy bills to come through in health and welfare and education to wait to set those budgets. This year, the revenue forecast was set later in the session than normal, and after the legislature passed a very large income tax bill. Were there any concerns about having an accurate revenue forecast before setting aside more than $200 million for that income tax cut?
That's another really good example of something we tried to do in January. Committee didn't agree. It failed. So we tried to set it in January, and we couldn't get consensus. Now we have consensus, and we said it as soon as we knew we had consensus.
Actually, a day earlier than last year.
That's correct.
We're running ahead.
One of the major policy priorities from the governor and from multiple lawmakers in both of your areas of the state is $30 million ongoing for water infrastructure projects, including recharge. What's the status of that request?
You'll see that on the agenda tomorrow. I know there was a bill move that tried to move. Unfortunately, it had an appropriation in it. The House side doesn't like appropriations in policy bills, the same way they don't like policy in appropriation bills. So you'll see that taken up by the committee. There will be language proposed. I hope there is support for ongoing $30 million, but that's a big step in terms of we've never had general fund ongoing for water projects before. So I'm certainly working that issue diligently. We had our first work group today on that, and so we hope to see that move tomorrow.
We're anxious to help that agreement that's been made. That's a tough agreement that they finally came to. We want to make sure that we do our part to help that thing move ahead.
All right, Senator Garreau, Representative Horman, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.